Hey, what's up guys, it's BenBonk and welcome back to the 27th Slimekeep Devlog. In this devlog, I added a bunch of new enemies to the game. Also, if you're new here, Slimekeep is a fast-paced roguelike where you must kill and capture slimes to stop the corruption that's infected your land. But without further ado, let's get into it. Now, before I get into making enemies, I just had a few small things to work on. First up, that_worm in my Discord server made this amazing boss health bar concept that I've been wanting to add for a while, so I figured now would be a good time to do so. So I downloaded the sprites and started adding them into Unity. It was a bit of a pain to get the actual health bar sprites in place because I kinda suck at creating UI, but in the end I got it done. Overall, I love this health bar and I think it looks amazing, so huge thanks to that worm for making it. Also, you might notice that the mech boss was a little broken for some weird reasons, so I had to spend longer than I would like to admit fixing him up. Moving on, another member of my Discord, Northernite, made this improved puddle art for the teleportation system that looked so much better compared to the old version. So I set all of this up in Unity, and now you can see that the art and animations look so much better and more realistic for this puddle. So thanks again to Northernite. Next, I had a few gameplay bugs that I wanted to fix up. For example, the assassin slime would disappear when shot and sometimes just disappear altogether for no reason. Also, I noticed that sometimes the rooms would open too early when there's a splitter slime in the room, so that was a bit confusing to work out, but in the end I got these issues sorted out, so that's nice. Next up, you might have noticed that I added some basic enemies to rooms for testing, as I really want to get the game playable. And actually fighting rooms of enemies is something that I really haven't worked on that much, so I wanted to try to focus on this. So first, I decided to make the decision of having enemies split up into different difficulties, so I can actually organize them and determine their difficulty. Rooms are already split up into 5 different difficulties, so I figured it would make sense to do so here also, as enemies are what makes the rooms actually difficult. So after doing this, you can see that I split up the 10 enemies in the game into 2 difficulties. 5 enemies were assigned difficulty 1, as these are pretty much the most basic and easy slimes in the game. Then I made the other 5 remaining slimes part of the difficulty 2 category, as they're a bit more complex, have more health, and are more difficult to deal with compared to difficulty 1 slimes. Now this is great for organization and to help with enemy layouts, but it also made me realize a major flaw in Slimekeep's enemies so far. And that is that they are just way too easy, and there aren't really any difficult enemies in the game. This is a problem because I want enemies to actually start getting more difficult over time, as the player will be gaining new weapons and upgrades, and well, that's just how difficulty curves work. So I realized that I couldn't really work on the game loop and progression as there aren't enough difficult enemies to work with. So I made it my goal for this devlog to add a boatload of more difficult enemies into Slimekeep. But before I do that, I wanted to work with the enemies that I do in fact already have made. So I spent a few hours creating some enemy layouts for the different room difficulties. I just dragged different enemy combinations into the rooms that shared their difficulty level. I didn't have much to work with here as there are only 5 enemies per difficulty level right now, but this should be enough for testing. And speaking of testing, I'm going to give you a simple test right now. Have you wishlist Slimekeep on Steam? If you haven't, please consider doing so. It helps a ton with the Steam algorithm and only takes a few seconds to do so. Link in the description. But with that done, it's now time to actually get into making new and difficult enemies. Now, I could do this all by myself, but the problem is making all the art, animations, logic, and all that stuff just takes a really long time to do. In the past, it's taken me upwards of 1 week to create a single enemy by myself, and I really want to make at least 15 new enemies over the next few weeks, 5 for each new difficulty. So yeah, you can do the math on that. To solve this issue, I decided to do 2 things. 1, cut back on enemy scope. Previously, enemies could have anywhere from 3 to 5 stages, but I'm going to limit this to 3 for now as I think that's enough stages and helps cut back on development time. And 2, I decided to make a contest on my Discord for people to submit their own enemy concepts and art. This way, people could actually potentially get their own enemy concepts and art in the game, and it saves me a ton of time as I don't have to make nearly as much art or even any at all. I could definitely make this art myself, but I think this is just a great way to include the community in the development of this game, and I just have to consider things like this if I want to actually finish this game in a reasonable amount of time. So I made this Google form and sent it off. A few days later, we had over 100 submissions. I truly want to thank everyone that submitted a slime. It's so incredibly helpful to me, and I don't know what I'd do without you guys. There were so many incredible submissions that I hope to get to add to the future, but there were also some questionable submissions, like this, and this, and this. But enough said, let's actually make some of these enemies. First up, Lim95 recommended that I turn the healer slime from the Slime King boss fight into an actual enemy. This sounded like a pretty good idea, so I got to work. First, I had to make some new animations and stages. I created a simple heal and death animation as well as 2 new stages for the slime, 1 bigger and 1 smaller. With that done, I set everything up in Unity and created the logic for the slime, which was pretty simple as all I had to do was just choose a random slime in the room and give that slime some more health. So in game, the slime will waddle around and every few seconds it'll stop and heal another slime, which is more of a health buff instead of a heal to be honest, but it works. I then set up the other 2 stages for the slime, which made the heals grant more health. So if you let this guy sit around for too long, you might have a little trouble killing other slimes. So yeah, that's the healer slime right there. Nothing too crazy, but I think it's a good addition. Moving on, Yedamamade made this concept for a miner slime, which I thought just looked amazing, so I decided to work on adding it into the game. The plan for this slime would be that after jumping, the slime would swing his pickaxe, launching a fast-paced rock towards the player. So after spending a while programming the logic and setting everything up, we had this. The miner would swing his pickaxe, and boom, a rock launched towards the player. I then shared this to my Discord, who gave some feedback that the rock should be a little more close range, as right now this attack was a little too similar to a regular projectile attack. So I made some changes and made the swing spawn a few rocks that would destroy after a short period, making the attack more like a shotgun attack. Then I implemented the later stages of the slime, where the rocks should go a further distance before destroying to add a bit more difficulty. And there you go, that is the miner slime. Next up, we had the dice slime. The art and idea was made by Ripple, who thought of a slime dice that would roll around a room. The twist is, whatever number the dice rolls on, that would be the number of projectiles that the dice slime would shoot. I love this concept and how unique it was, so I got to work. I started off by making the die rolling in Unity. This wasn't too difficult, as all I had to do was choose a random direction to roll, play a quick animation, and increase or decrease the die's position. I then worked on the actual rolling and projectile spawning. After a roll finishes, I just made it so the die would choose randomly from an array of die number sprites, and loop through that many times to shoot projectiles. Here's what this looked like. The die just rolls around and causes a bit of chaos. Next, I needed to work on some bigger stages, so I got the die to upgrade after a few rolls, making the die bigger, spawning bigger projectiles. So that is the die or dice slime right there. Next on the list, we had the servant slime by Beta. The idea here being that the slime could either lunge towards the player or do a ground pound towards the player, both being very similar to the Slime King's brute phase. Back to work I was, and I got this rough draft of the lunge attack in place. Now, this is a start, but I honestly didn't think it looked that good, and the whole attack felt super clunky and rough. So I created a sort of tweening solution, which helped a ton. And as you can see, I added in a few more stages for the slime. Next up was the ground pound attack. I basically just copied the code from the King's ground pound attack, made some changes, set up some animations, and boom, here you go. The slime will just randomly choose between the 2 attacks, and yeah, that's pretty much it. For the next slime, we have the ghostly slime by Toasted Toast. This slime would jump around the room with a ring around it, blocking all incoming bullets shot from outside the ring. And if you enter the ring, the slime would shoot projectiles at you, creating an interesting dynamic between the player and the enemy. In game, with everything set up, here's what this slime looks like. He jumps around, going invisible at times. His ring blocks all incoming projectiles, and if you enter the ring, he'll shoot projectiles at you. This creates an interesting balancing act for the player, as they have to weave in and out of the ring to damage the ghost and avoid getting damaged themselves. Also, this slime only has 1 stage because, well, he's a ghost, I don't know. But anyways, I shared this concept for some feedback, and quite a few people thought that would be better is instead of randomly shooting projectiles towards the player, the ghost would make a pulse of projectiles in all directions. This sounded smart, so I edited the projectiles to make the slime feel a lot better. I also increased the size of the ring slightly to give the player some more wiggle room, and that was the ghostly slime for you. Then I worked on the Bard slime by Milk, which is just a simple slime who plays instruments to upgrade other slimes. Very simple stuff, but it's a nice addition, and I love how the slime plays their instruments. Next up was the baseball slime by Yedamamade yet again. The plan for this guy was that he would swing his bat, which would reflect projectiles shot by the player back towards them. This swing would be on a cooldown to balance the slime, and the cooldown would get less and less with each stage to add difficulty. After some work, I got a rough concept in place. The slime would now detect when a bullet is going to hit them with a simple trigger collider, and the slime will use tweening to swing the bat and just destroy the projectile for now. Unfortunately, there was a glitch where the projectile wouldn't destroy, but I ended up fixing that later. I then used some extremely advanced trigonometry to determine the angle of reflection, and I'm just kidding, I added 180 degrees to the projectile's Z rotation. So now the projectile deflection actually worked, and there's a cooldown for the bat. Then I created the other stages with less cooldowns, and there you go, I'm really happy with this one. For the next mission, we have Yedamamade yet again with the nerdy slime. I had the idea of making this slime display a math problem, and the answer to that math problem would determine the number of projectiles that slime would shoot, sort of similar to how the dice slime works. I spent a while on the logic for this and ended up with this so far. There were still a ton of issues, but now the slime would jump around, and after every jump he'd make a math problem and spawn a bunch of different projectiles that move towards the player's position depending on that math problem. Some more work later, and I turned the projectiles into bombs, using the same numbers from these math problems. These numbers would tick down, and once they reached 0, they would explode. I just really like this idea of how the slime used numbers as a part of his actual attack, which goes along with his theme. But we weren't done just yet. I fixed a few bugs with the slime and made it so the slime couldn't make math problems that result in super large numbers and created the difficulty scaling for the slime. Basically, with each upgrade, the slime would use math symbols that are more likely to produce larger numbers. For example, in the first stage, the slime can only use division and subtraction, but in the last stage, the slime can only use addition and multiplication. In addition, I made the actual number bombs have shorter countdowns, so they have to tick less before exploding. So there you go, this is probably my favorite slime in the game so far, so I hope you guys like it. And finally, let's just rapid fire the last 2 slimes I had in this devlog. First, we have the Spearman slime by the legend Yedamamade yet again, who throws a spear at the player, which slowly locks onto the player. And then we also have the Aura slime by 1MB, who just moves towards the player with a deadly pulsing aura that increases in radius with each stage. And there you go, that's 10 brand new slimes added in the Slimekeep. I'm still kind of shocked I was able to add all these slimes so quickly, and I couldn't have done without all your guys' support, so thanks so much again. And that's all I have to really say for now. We'll be working on a few more slimes in the next devlog, so stay tuned for that. But I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, bye.